what's up, everyone? Sam here from Wall Street Mastermind. I'm here today for another client interview. And today I have Justin with us. Justin is a senior, a rising senior. He just started senior year, and he just finished going through the full-time recruiting process during the pandemic, no less. And so was able to obviously get to an outcome that he's very happy with. And so definitely wanted to get him to come on here and talk to you guys, especially since I know there are probably a lot of you out there who are maybe in the same boat right now going through, the exact same process. So Justin, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, no problem. Good to be here.
So maybe to start off, if you could just kind of introduce yourself a little bit to our listeners, just kind of like, who you are, your background, so they kind of know what type of candidate you were.
Sure. So I, as Sam mentioned, am a senior at the University of Michigan in the Raw School of Business. I had a couple finance internships the first couple years of college in wealth management and asset management. And I spent this past summer working in the M&A group at BMO Capital Markets, doing investment banking, obviously. It was a great experience, but due to the pandemic, it was all remote, which poses a number of challenges. And one of those was, certain hiring constraints that banks had to face. And that was evident in my internship process as well as in the full-time recruiting process. So when I decided to recruit full-time again, I was faced with, a small amount of time to try and get into these processes that were really moving very quickly. So that's kind of how I ended up coming to Sam, because I knew that I had a lot to learn in a very short amount of time. And I thought he would be the one to help me do that.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been a weird summer for sure. We heard, because we talked to a lot of clients, right? And like the offer rate this summer was for full time, going from summer to full time, I think across the board was significantly lower than it's been in previous years, right? We also know students who actually had their internship canceled entirely before
Right.
they even started. Like I had clients that got offers from Cantor, and and they just canceled their internship entirely. So it's been a crazy year. I mean, I don't think anyone's really gonna miss 2020 in hindsight.
Yeah.
So basically, you decided to come to us. It sounded like because you did the internship, but given everything that's going on with COVID, like you did well during the internship. You got good reviews. You had good feedback from your team, but they kind of had to put you on hold before they could decide if they were going to give you an offer.
Yeah. That's basically what happened. Really just COVID related is how it was explained to me. And after working so hard to get the internship and working hard in the internship, that's a frustrating answer. But
Yeah.
there really wasn't time to like sit around and be upset about how it ended. It was more just about like turning around quickly, because as soon as that happened, the full-time processes were already like in mid-swing.
Right. So when did they tell you that? Was it like early August or?
Yep, that was the end of the first week of August, where I found out, and then I basically the next week, so mid-August, I guess, began recruiting full time, and I realized that like places were already having interviews. So as soon as I began recruiting, as soon as I began networking, I just started getting like pushed through to some of their interviews. Some places I didn't even have time to network. I just like started submitting applications via like Handshake or like career websites, like our Ross career website and stuff.
Yeah.
And the interviews just started coming really quickly. And I think that's probably, I think I have a fairly strong resume, but really just having that investment banking experience, a lot of firms knew that there were a lot of strong candidates out there that were going to be looking for positions, after what happened this summer.
Yeah, got it. So like what obviously you already had, it was kind of unique because you already had a summer internship in banking, right? Like a lot of our clients, when they come to Wall Street Mastermind, we're helping them get into banking for the first time, right? I also remember that when you join Wall Street Mastermind, I think on your application you put that you've been on our newsletter for over a year and a half. So you've actually, I guess, been on the email list this entire time. what made you, so I guess like this whole time you're lurking kind of in the background, obviously you didn't come to us for help with your summer recruiting. What made you want to come to us this time for help with the full-time recruiting?
Yeah, so there were probably a number of factors. I'd say, I signed up for the newsletter when I was going through my summer recruiting, just because I thought it would be like another useful piece of information. You post some useful articles and some insights just within that. So I was getting some useful stuff from there. I think with internship recruiting, at least here at Ross, like there's a lot of heavy on-campus stuff,
Mhm.
Ross does a good job of just kind of funneling banks through campus, and they end up taking a lot of candidates. So I wasn't as worried about what that process would look like. I think with full-time recruiting, there was much more of a question mark about how the process even worked from my perspective. Like I didn't really know, how to go about figuring out if which firms were recruiting, which weren't, which groups were recruiting, and what the timing of that would be. And I thought that this would just kind of add some structure to my full-time recruiting process, which I think looking back, like was a great, much needed structure. So that's what kind of got me here. But also, a second thing I'll say is that, I hadn't interviewed in like a year and a half. So I got my BMO offer pretty early on, in my like late sophomore year, which now I'm a senior, obviously. So we're talking like 16 or 17 months ago.
Yeah.
And that's a long time to go without interviewing. And, my stories have changed for my behaviorals, my communication style has changed. And I was just rusty. So I thought that this would be a great place to, just help me hone my answers and maybe do some mock interviews and just get more comfortable interviewing.
I think most people that are listening to this interview right now wouldn't understand what you're saying when you say your communication style is rusty. I feel like you're a pretty good communicator. So, but maybe it's because you've just gone through the entire recruiting process and you've been able to brush up on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy to always talk about yourself and like kind of dig deep and answer these questions. And like even simple sounding behavioral questions, as you know, are like can be challenging if you don't have prepared answers or if you've not practiced them. So I was
Yeah.
looking just for help practicing and really practicing the right answers. I wanted to know that the answers I was practicing, if I was going to be putting in this work, that I was spending my time efficiently and that I was, like coming up with answers that were going to be effective and get the job done.
Efficiency is really was especially, I mean, it always is even for summer internship recruiting, but for even more so for full-time recruiting, like efficiency is the name of the game, right? Because the timeline is so compressed. Even the firms that are hiring, they maybe have one offer or two offer, probably one offer typically, and then once it's filled, and then there's no more, right? And
Right.
so it's like sometimes if something takes too long, that could literally be the difference between you getting an offer versus not, right? So I think
Yeah.
that was really that was really great thinking on your part. I gotta ask you, so because I myself I see a lot of similarities where I graduated in 2008, right? I interned at Bear Stearns in 2007, and most of you are probably too young to remember, but that was the summer that Bear Stearns, all their two hedge funds collapsed, and it triggered the entire financial crisis. So I didn't, for a different reason, and not COVID, but for a different reason, I didn't get a return offer either to Bear. When I recruited for full time, it was really really tough because again the market wasn't that good, but also I think probably similar experience to you, which is I got a lot of interviews because I already had banking experience on my resume, but then every single interview, one of the first questions I would get asked is, "Did you get a return offer?" Right? That was, I'm guessing that was probably your experience as well. So
Yeah.
how did you handle that? Because I'm sure a lot of people right now, especially the people that are interested in listening to this episode specifically, they're probably maybe in the same situation as you and probably having trouble with that question. So how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I expected to be asked that by everyone. If I was an interviewer, I would probably want to know the same thing, because there's probably no better way to gauge your potential for success in investment banking than your past investment banking performance.
Yeah.
But I think, first off, everyone was pretty understanding about what the times are like right now. People understand that this is not a normal time, and firms are going through different things, and they're having different hiring policies, and there's just it's not a normal summer. And the second thing is that it was all virtual. So I think based on that, they were just being more understanding about, I probably didn't have as much of a chance to like interact with my group and see if it was a fit. I probably didn't have as much ability to do hands-on modeling or as much as productive hands-on work, because I wasn't there with my team. So teams were, interviewers were pretty understanding, I'd say overall. And I think really, you have to be honest when you're asked that question, but I think that can their concerns about that can kind of be put to the side if you are confident that the job that you can do the job, and you show it throughout the interview, whether it's technical or behavioral. You show that you're still qualified and you still want to do it. Those letting them judge for themselves, I found, is way more important than what they believe about another firm's judgment of you. So so just showing, trying to, you have to kind of recover from that, because no one wants to say something bad, to start an interview, or something that isn't like portraying you in your best light. But I found that, by answering technicals correctly and answering behavioral as well, you can really put that concern to the side.
In other words, maybe you're slightly disadvantaged because you have to overcome the potential stigma of not having a return offer, but the way to make up for that is really to just really knock it out of the park with answering your behavioral questions and answering your technical questions, so that they have the confidence that, hey, this guy's telling us it wasn't performance related, and his words kind of back that up, basically.
Right. I mean, I feel like if you tell them it's not performance related, it's easy for them to be skeptical about that. Maybe not in these times. I'd say people were more immediately understanding about that.
Yeah.
But just in general, I think you can, if they say it's performance related and you show that you can actually do the job, or that you've learned since then or something like that,
Yeah.
they'd rather make their own judgment.
And I guess it helps too, because I mean, you were telling the truth, and that like your group actually gave you really good feedback, and so you can offer to have them do whatever reference checks they want with your bosses from the summer and stuff, and they would back up your claims, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. So let's talk about kind of, we've talked about pre-Wall Street Mastermind. Let's talk about, uh, once you join Wall Street Mastermind, like what were some of the things that you did once you started working with us?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, when I joined, the full-time recruiting process was kind of in full swing. So I'd say within a week of like starting the process and starting networking, I was getting interviews already, because firms were trying to move quickly. And I'd say I really had 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks or so of just jam-packed with like multiple interviews a week, technical, behavioral, every kind of interview. Towards the end, some super days, and it was just a lot to prepare for at once, and I knew that I'd have to prepare that quickly. So I really spent a lot of my time on the behavioral modules at first, just to kind of go through my stories, see, kind of get some feedback on those, and the best way to answer some of these common behavioral questions.
Yeah.
And I found it really useful that the way you guys, kind of take a couple days to go through the answers, to give feedback, to edit them. And in the meantime, I started going through all the technical modules. And, having done the summer in investment banking, I thought the technicals wouldn't be as necessary as they were. But after doing a couple like practice interviews, I kind of realized that having a high level understanding and understanding how things work is not really enough. You have to be able to articulate it, which is kind of a different skill than just than what like building a model might be. So even though I had that experience, I realized I still needed a good amount of help with the technicals. And the behavioral, the technical video modules were probably more helpful than any technical training I've gotten, just because it's as I'm sure a lot of people do before coming to Wall Street Mastermind, I studied for my technical interviews by reading the guides, reading those common like Breaking into Wall Street or the 400 questions, just different kinds of guides, which are useful. It's a great starting point, but at some point it it's hard to learn and have your questions answered if you're just reading the same words on paper, because
Yeah.
people understand things in different ways. And also, if you can't really judge like how something should be said, or like the tone or inflection, there can be a lot of meaning that's lost on you there. So once I started watching the videos, some things that I previously hadn't understood, and maybe even some of the more advanced concepts, that because I was recruiting for full time, I had to be prepared to be asked about.
Yeah.
Those just started clicking and started understanding them more. And then while I started working through those, I got my behavioral feedback back, and started practicing those in the meantime. So it was a lot going on concurrently, but I think the way that I was able to do it here made it very efficient with my time, and I was able to kind of incrementally get pretty prepared for the interviews as they came.
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that we parallel processed it, where hey, you worked on your behaviorals first, you send it to us, and then we do spend a lot of time to like actually give you very detailed feedback on every single one of the answers. So
Yeah.
that takes a good amount of time, but it's not like you're just sitting around and waiting for us. You're, learning the technicals simultaneously. And so that goes back to what we said in the beginning about the importance of being efficient. Like that's basically as efficient as we could possibly be, right?
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
One thing that you just mentioned, which is um, you found the videos where we're teaching you the technicals to be really helpful. Have you taken like similar, video courses from Wall Street Prep or Breaking Wall Street, or were you just using the guides?
I mean, I had, at the beginning of my internship, I had an external training company come in and do actual hands-on training, but
Yeah.
still that was more like, how to build a three-statement model, how to build a DCF, how to build an LBO, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
still not, interview type questions and not those kinds of technicals. So in terms of like studying for technical interviews, no, I had never used any kind of video. I made use of my school's resources and stuff and done mock interviews for that, but never just like a one-on-one, tutorial the way this is.
Got it. Yeah, because one question that we get a lot from people, and I'm curious to hear your take on this, is people ask like, oh, so okay, you guys have all these like video trainings, recording, whatever. What's the difference between your video training and the video training I can get online or from Wall Street Prep or Breaking Wall Street or even YouTube perhaps? Like, is it really that different? I mean, technicals are technicals, right? I mean, obviously, I know what I think because I created it, but I'm curious to hear like what you felt the difference was, or maybe not even compared to other videos, but even that compared to you just studying the guides. Like,
Yeah.
is it really that different? Because the answers are the same, right?
Well, theoretically the answers are the same, but I think watching videos about these concepts, it's like being in a classroom. Like you can have a good teacher, you can have a bad teacher, and I think you're definitely a good teacher. You explain things in a way that no one had to me before, and things like I mentioned, things that I hadn't understood before started clicking because of the way you explained it. Another thing I'd say is that it's pretty unique to, if you go online and you search a video, you watch the video and it ends with you. I could actually, send you a message after I watch a video and ask you a question, or in the broader Wall Street Mastermind group, ask someone else who's part of the community a question about something I didn't understand. And I think that's really unique to, the parts that I don't get still from watching that video, to be able to follow up with the creator of the video or other people who have seen it, is pretty unique, and it kind of takes out all of like the holes in knowledge that I might have otherwise had, and kind of make sure that like I'm picking up everything I need to pick up.
Right. You're talking about like our private Slack channel that our clients are in, and
Yes.
being able
Yeah.
to send a quick message anytime you have a question, and always get an answer within, like, if not right away, then within a couple hours, basically.
Right. I mean, yeah, people are pretty responsive and helpful. And I think people, everyone has their own questions. So I think when someone else asks a question, people want to, help out as well. So I found that to be very useful too.
our technical question channel is definitely pretty popping, I gotta say. Like a lot of times before we can even jump in there and answer people's questions, I'll see another client jump in and answer the question, and then I'll read his answers, and it'll be like pretty darn good answer. I'll be like, all right, well, I don't even need to do anything anymore. You can just answer everyone's questions. Like I'm gonna be
Exactly.
out of a job soon.
Yeah.
But no, that's really cool though. Is that it really is kind of a community, right? And I really one thing I really love about our clients is that everyone's so collaborative. You know, you would think that with something like banking where everybody's trying to get, just there's only so many jobs out there. Everyone's trying to get these jobs. You would think that it'd be a bit more cutthroat where people is like, hey, if I help you and you get the job, then that means I'm not going to get the job. But I feel like there isn't really any like scarcity around here, and people are just really willing to help each other. And then as a result of that, everybody's winning together, which is really amazing to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think people have. I think there's a like diverse array of people who in the Wall Street Mastermind community. So I think people don't always feel as if they're competing directly with those other people. But another thing is that I think it gives a vote of confidence for yourself when you see someone who's doing the same things as you have success. It shows that this is paying off. Like there are results, and that's really going back. That's really one of the things that drove me here was full-time recruiting in this environment. It's a question mark as to whether you'll get an offer, which is not something I wanted. It's not something I was happy about or felt great about. So I had known your track record and your results, and I wanted to do a program that I knew could give me the tools I needed to get there, versus doing it by myself, whereas there would just be that big question mark.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And what about on the behavioral side? So obviously, like we mentioned, you drafted out your answers and you submitted to us and we reviewed it for you. But what was most helpful or different about kind of our approach versus, like you said, you probably already had a lot of resources at Ross, right? It was a great target school. You guys, a lot of people go into banking, and I'm sure you got a ton of help from whether it's other students or even the career center on campus. Like, why not just do something like that? Like, was there really a difference in terms of what we were doing for you?
Well, the difference is the people who were reviewing my technical, I mean, my behavioral answers were people who have been in investment banking and have interviewed other candidates for investment banking. So getting feedback from the interviewer basically is incredibly valuable, and to be able to do it before I step in the interview and kind of avoid some of the common pitfalls or like wording that I don't know, things that may throw up a red flag for an interview, or just like smoothing all of those things out, and hearing that from your perspective and from the perspective of former investment bankers is really useful, because like my Ross has a lot of great resources, a lot of great like interview prep and resume resources, but it's not from the perspective of people who have actually interviewed investment banking candidates. So this was, I definitely made use of those school resources, but this was a very useful perspective to kind of smooth over the rest of the things that maybe I didn't catch before.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, usually when we talk to a lot of candidates, they feel like, hey, behaviorals are behaviorals. Like there's not really that much that needs to be worked on, right? It's like I know what I'm going to say for these answers, and I feel like they're pretty good already. Like, was that kind of how you felt already coming in, or did you kind of feel like, you know what, my behaviors could be better, and like, if so, why?
I felt like one, my stories had changed a lot since I had last interviewed, and then I also felt that I didn't necessarily know how I wanted to be structuring these answers. I in the past had really just kind of told stories off memory, and kind of just not like I wasn't winging it, but I wasn't as much working with like some kind of structure. I would say I wasn't thinking about it in a structured way. I would just try to articulate my answers in a way that I felt summed up the key points, but and that's fine, and that'll work in some situations, but especially recruiting full time, where, as you're saying, there firms have one offer, maybe two, in a lot of cases. It's not anymore like good enough to just sum up the points in a way that gets the key points across. I thought I needed to actually make those answers a strength of mine, rather than just another part of the interview, in order to get good results. I felt like it would be very easy to go up against someone who is equally skilled at the technicals, has an equal amount of experience, and as strong of a resume, and not get the job, even though my behaviorals are okay. And I didn't want that to be the reason that I didn't get the job, because like the way you structure your behaviorals doesn't really speak to your qualifications to be an investment banker, but it's just an interview skill. And I thought that it was a very important thing to get help on.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I would say it's probably the most important part of the interview is the
Yeah,
behavioral interview, right? Because we do see people who crush their behavioral answers and maybe they miss one or two technicals here and there and they still get the offer. But we also see a lot of people who nail all the technicals and they don't get the offer because their behaviors are just mediocre, right? And at the
yeah,
end of the day, it comes down to whether the banker actually likes you or not.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
less about whether you're a technical whiz and more about just, hey, as a human being, like, you know, do they want to work with you for 80, 90, 100 hours a week, right?
right.
And how do you come off to them? So that makes a ton of sense, man. So I guess if we fast forward, so to the end of the recruiting process for you, um, ultimately, like, what was the outcome for you?
So the ultimate outcome was I ended up getting two offers on the same day, and they gave me about a week to accept. And I just kind of reflected, spoke to some more people at the firms, and ultimately decided on one, and I'm very excited about it.
And was that like what went into that decision making process? Like, what were you looking for, I guess, or even like coming into this process? I don't know, like, did you have expectations for, hey, I want a certain type of bank, or I don't know whether it's size of the bank or what kind of industry they covered, or and did you get what you were looking for, or like how did you kind of think about that?
So there were a couple things. For me, it was first off, I wanted to interview anyone anywhere that was interviewing. First off, because of how few places were
Sure.
interviewing. But
Yeah.
um, but I mean, I had a as I mentioned, I was in the M&A group this past summer, but I've always been interested in healthcare. So if there was going to be an industry that I was going to focus in, it was going to be healthcare. So I started looking into a lot of the industry specific boutiques, especially for healthcare. And I actually found that a lot of them were hiring and doing interview processes. But when it came down to it, one of my offers was from a healthcare bank, and one was from a fintech and financial services focused boutique. And when it came down to it, I enjoyed the people at both firms. I enjoy going through the process at both firms, and it really just came down to the industry at the end of the day. I think there are a lot of cultural similarities between the two places I got offers, and that could just be a product of being smaller firms, and especially compared to where I worked this past summer. But I felt like both were a great fit. It just came down to where will I find like motivation in the work I'm doing, and I thought healthcare was really interesting to me. Nothing against financial services. I just found it to be a little more up my alley in terms of my interests.
Yeah, and I mean that's honestly I think healthcare is one of the coolest groups to be in. Even like I mean even during COVID, a lot of groups have been just getting um, decimated in terms of their deal flow, meaning like lack of deal flow rather, because nobody's doing
Yeah,
deals, right? But healthcare is one of the few pockets within banking where there's actually been still a ton of deals happening, and also the companies that you're working with are obviously working on some pretty impactful products or services, right? Especially in times like
yeah,
this. So it does make the work more fulfilling, I feel like, as well. So
Definitely, especially in this time, like there's just a crazy amount of activity. They just kept talking about how swamped they are and how stretched thin they are, which from my perspective is a good thing.
yeah,
Because the firms that don't have deal flow are the ones that are not interviewing people for full time right now. So um, made me optimistic that they were going to be able to extend some offers.
yeah, get ready for those horrible hours, I guess. It's two sides of the same coin. But no, I mean it's a good thing. You want to be busy, especially during your those first 2 years, and you want to get the best experience possible, right? And learn as much as you can. So that's awesome, man. I'm super happy for you. It's quite the accomplishment to come out of full-time recruiting with an offer, especially in this current environment. I mean, even in the usual environment, I would already say it's very, very hard to do.
Yeah,
To do it in 2020 during the pandemic, I think you have a lot to be really, really proud of. So huge congrats on that.
thank you.
Last question for you before I let you go. So there's probably a lot of people who are in your shoes, or whether it's right now or even in the future when people listen to this, where, maybe they're either didn't do a summer internship and they're trying to recruit for full time, or maybe they did do a summer internship and they decide to recruit again for full time. What's like one piece of advice you would give people who are going through the full time recruiting process, or like maybe it's something that you wish you had known back when you started this process?
Hmm. Um, I think there are really two things that help me. One is be optimistic, and the other is be open minded. In terms of optimism, as I mentioned, like there's a question mark in this process in a way that maybe there's not as big of one in the summer analyst recruiting in the normal year because there's more positions typically. So being optimistic is important to just kind of keep going, keep putting in the time because it's a very short and condensed process, and you don't really have time to get down on yourself or your odds and kind of take a day or a couple days off from trying to reach that goal, because just the process has moved too quickly for that. So being optimistic helped me to just stay focused and stay grounded and not have so much doubt, because I think doubt would have put a dent in like my confidence during interviews, my confidence in the process, and would have kind of dragged me down as I was sending emails and doing all the typical things and doing phone calls. So it's important to just have optimism that something will work out, and that you just need to find the right place. And finding the right place, that goes into being open-minded. When I was recruiting for internships, I didn't really look at any industry specific boutiques. But once I started kind of opening my mind to what was out there, I found that there was a lot more out there than I previously thought. Maybe these places aren't always on like they don't always come to mind when you think of what is a bank, or what banks have you heard of, or and like if you talk to someone outside banking, maybe they haven't heard the name before, but that's not uh, the end of the world when it comes to full-time recruiting. There are a lot of great firms out there that I hadn't even heard of, and I had the opportunity to interview there, and I was just glad I did. I was glad I was able to dig deeper, like find other places, other really cool firms that do a lot of great work, and kind of make a list of those in addition to maybe some of the other middle market and bulge bracket firms that I had connections at and had networked at, and that just really widened the universe of places I was recruiting. And recruiting, especially full time, is really just a numbers game when it comes to how many emails you send, how many phone calls you get on, how many interviews you get. The percentages are pretty low for all of those, for the yield on all of those. So it's just the more places, the broader the universe of firms, the better chance you have at getting an interview and an offer. So by widening, by opening my mind and widening the list of places that I was looking at, I was able to get many more interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice, man. And by the way, I think you're being modest. I mean, I always say the firm that you're going to, they do very, very well, and at least within healthcare, which
Oh,
is
definitely.
so that's really the most important thing is like you want to go to a firm that's good at what they do. right? Because if they're good at what they do, um, that's what's going to determine how much deal flow they have. And how much deal flow
Right.
they have is what's going to determine how good of an experience you get, and that in turn determines a whole lot of other things like your learning experience, your exit opportunities, and whatnot. And so I think that yeah, I think you ended up at a great place, and again, I'm super happy for you. So
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely excited. Definitely, happy with about the offer, the work that they do, and the conversations I've had. I thought it all went well, and I think that I would be happy to get this offer in any type of environment. And kind of wish I knew about this firm when I was recruiting for my internships. I think it's a really great fit, and I'm super excited.
that's awesome, man. Well, look, guys, for those of you that are listening, maybe you're in a similar situation as Justin. Maybe you're about to go through full-time recruiting, and you realize how tough it is, or maybe you just, in general, you have the same sense of urgency when it comes to recruiting, where you understand that efficiency is the name of the game, and you just want to be able to do everything right the first time without having to go through a ton of trial and error or figuring things out on your own. If that sounds like you, then what I want to do is invite you to schedule a free strategy session with us, and someone on our team will jump on with you and just speak to you, learn more about your situation, see what it is that you need help with, and also what are your goals, right? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And then based on what you tell us, we'll see. Perhaps we're a good fit to help you, like we did with Justin, or even for not, just because we can't possibly work with everybody, but even if not, we'll still do our best to just give you advice on what we think we would do if we were in your shoes. So if you want to book this call, what you could do is go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's really wallstmastermind.com/apply. And we look forward to speaking with you and helping you with this process. So with that, Justin, I want to thank you again for taking the time to just hop on here and talk to us about your experiences today. I think you gave a lot of really, really good advice to people, and I'm sure everyone appreciates it. And I appreciate you for, doing that. And, like I said, super happy and excited for you. I look forward to, obviously staying in touch and also seeing all the success that you have going into full-time and beyond. And
Thank you.
don't be a stranger, and you're always part of our wolf pack, our family. And I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was a pleasure. All right, guys, that'll be it for today, and thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back with more of these in the near future for you guys. Okay, talk to you later.